On January 6th, Mike Pence was frighteningly close to getting killed by an angry mob that was chanting, "Hang Mike Pence," and Donald Trump's reaction, in short, was, I like that. So as you all know, the January 6th hearings are going on where they're revealing everything they've found about what happened on January 6th and the lead up to it. And one of the things that was revealed in the first hearing was that whenever Donald Trump was notified that people were chanting, "Hang Mike Pence," and they were going after his vice president trying to kill him, Trump's reaction was positive. He liked the fact that a mob was trying to kill his vice president. Let's take a look at that moment.
And aware of the rioters' chants to hang Mike Pence, the president responded with this sentiment, quote, "Maybe our supporters have the right idea. Mike Pence, quote, deserves it."
Just absolutely horrifying stuff. I don't care if you're the most right-wing person, you have to hear that type of evidence being released and just completely eject from the Trump movement. I mean, he was okay with the idea. He was feeling good about the idea of Mike Pence being hung by Trump's angry mob. That is just, I don't even know how to process that. It's insane. A president wanting his vice president to be hung because of the president's lies about an election that he fairly lost. And then during the third hearing, they dug into something that had been previously reported, but they got into the specifics, which was Pence was so close to being reached by that mob. Approximately 40 feet, that's all there was, 40 feet between the vice president and the mob. I mean, this mob was coming for Mike Pence 40 feet away from reaching him. Who knows if they got to him? I mean, they were chanting, "Hang Mike Pence." They had a thing out in the front ready to hang him with. That is, I don't even know what Mike Pence must think about that day. He was 40 feet away. That is so close from being reached by that mob. And this is an interesting thing that came out of the hearing. Greg Jacob, Vice President Mike Pence's general counsel, testified before the January 6th committee hearing on Thursday that Pence refused to leave the U.S. Capitol despite the danger to his life because of the message it would send internationally about the state of U.S. democracy. I just want to say, I know for my audience, Mike Pence, and I feel this too, has a really, really bad record. I mean, everything before Trump, but then also his actions with Trump, just absolutely kissing up to him, absolutely trying to legitimize him, and doing everything to uplift Trump as a leader, no matter how damaging he got. It has to be recognized how much character it took to do what Mike Pence did on that day. And that little detail too, he was being offered an evacuation from the Capitol and he said no, because that will be a terrible sign about the state of US democracy to the world and to this country. And so I'm going to stay closer to the people who want to have me killed so that we can represent American strength and American democracy during this time of peril. So that is amazing. And then also the fact that he time and time again, if you watch the third hearing, which I definitely think y'all should go back if you haven't and watch all of the hearings, but during that third hearing, it was made abundantly clear how much pressure Pence was put under by Trump and all of his allies to try to reject the lawful results of the election that had happened and pretend that Trump won or send it back to the states or whatever it was. And that would have put us in an insane constitutional crisis, but he didn't do that. And so I think that regardless of how bad of a politician or bad of a person you are generally, if you are willing to put at least the basic health of our democracy above your own ability to stay in power, your own ability to make your base and your president happy, then you deserve a level of respect. And you are the reason that our democracy didn't die that day. So let's go ahead and look at some of the moments from that third January 6th hearing where Mike Pence was repeatedly and intensely pressured to do this plan to try to keep Trump in power, but he said no because he knew it was unconstitutional and no one man should have the ability to reject the will of the people in that type of way. Let's take a look.
Then President Donald Trump riling up his supporters on January 6, 2021.
I'm telling you, if Pence caved, we're going to drag mother through the street.
And directing their anger towards Vice President Mike Pence.
Mike Pence is going to have to come through for us. And if he doesn't, that will be a sad day for our country.
Trump personally putting the pressure on Pence in a tense phone call that morning.
He called him a wimp.
It was a different tone than I'd heard him take with the vice president before.
Do you remember what she said her father called him.
The P word.
Later tweeting an attack on Pence after rioters had breached the Capitol. All as Trump had been told repeatedly that Pence had no authority to simply reject states' electoral college votes, as he presided over the congressional certification of the 2020 election.
Was it your impression that the vice president had directly conveyed his position on these issues to the president, not just to the world through a Dear Colleague letter, but directly to President Trump?
Many times.
And had been consistent in conveying his position to the president?
Very consistent.
Pence's former counsel recalling tense deliberations in the White House, including this demand from Eastman on January 5th.
What most surprised me about that meeting was that when Mr. Eastman came in, he said, "I'm here to request that you reject the electors." He came in and expressly requested that.
And as Trump and Pence were privately sparring about the vice president's role, Trump issued a statement saying he and the vice president were in total agreement that Pence had the power to act.
We were shocked and disappointed because whoever had written and put that statement out, it was categorically untrue.
I mean, there's an element of Pence put himself there. He decided to run on that ticket with Trump. And so eventually, whenever you allow someone to get away with bad things, they're gonna keep escalating to a point where it goes even against your own moral principles. But setting that aside, just think about how difficult of a moment he was in, where all of his supporters and the man that he was supposed to be serving was trying to get him to do something he knew to be unconstitutional and un-American. And he knew the second that he didn't do it, all hell was gonna break loose for him. But he did it anyways. And so I'll just keep saying, regardless of the lack of respect I had before now, this gains some serious respect to be able to stand up for what you know is right in such a difficult time. And it led him to having his life threatened. 40 feet away was this mob trying to kill him. None of that would have happened to him if he had gone along with this plot. Now, it would have thrown our country into an incredibly terrible constitutional crisis and likely horrible riots in the streets and all this type of stuff. So it was amazing that he did what he did, but you can't pass up the fact that it was a difficult but moral decision to make. And then we also can never forget that Trump had a positive response to the prospect of Mike Pence being hung by Trump's followers. And I'll just keep saying the Trump movement and Trump himself is a massive threat to our democracy. And so we gotta work with conservatives too. If you're watching and you're conservative, you have to be a part of this as well. If you're a conservative and you don't believe Trump's election lies and the idea that we should overturn the results of said election, then we need you as well. Every American who watches those hearings and is disturbed by it needs to unite to prevent that movement and that individual from getting back in power.